Thank you. Good morning. I'd like to call the meeting of County Facilities Committee order. 28. We'll begin this morning with fire prevention and building code enforcement agenda. Alice is here. Good to see them. We'll begin with discussion approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Thank you, Mr. Stroud, second, Mr. Jones. Any discussion, changes, additions, deletions? Not a call to question, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. Your action agenda, new business, nothing there. Discussion items, nothing there. Referrals and pending items. Employee retirements.
Morning, everyone. Just a quick update. We currently have 2 open positions. They've been posted. I have received like 3 applications, hoping to get more. I'm gonna have to end up, I think, reposting the position. I'm gonna call civil service this morning and have them repost it for another time frame and see if we get any more interest. One of those was from retirement, one was from a resignation. And to go backwards, I know that's been out there for a while. I did have multiple meetings with Trish before she retired in trying to offset employee retirements with bringing in new people ahead of time. With civil service laws, it became very difficult to establish a position where someone could then transition into a code enforcement officer position without having to take examinations. And we couldn't really have it set up so it was an automatic thing. So it really ended in the end, after multiple discussions, it really ended up not being able to go anywhere, which is why it's never been brought back here. We just couldn't come up with a way to make a transition guaranteed position that didn't have a time frame to it that they had to transition into or pass the civil service exam to be able to make that transition. So there really has been no more movement. I mean, I can certainly reach out with Jackie and see if we can't. She has some other ideas, but with Trish, we really didn't get anywhere at the end with all of that. So at this stage, like I said, we got 2 open positions. It is posted. I have a couple of applications. I don't know how much more interest there's going to be. I have talked to Washington County. They have currently 2 open positions as well. So, and we've all of us in there have talked to everyone we run into in the field. So I don't know how many qualified applicants we're really going to get. I think there's 2 reasons behind that. One is salary, and the other is the fact that people are going into enforcement. So those are the 2 main factors that I'm hearing. Typically a subcontractor construction now would be upwards of $50, $60, $70 an hour. So they're taking a half pay cut to pay, and then the enforcement side of it. So it certainly is a challenging environment right now.
Just a quick question. How many do you have other code enforcement? And what's the staffing level? What's your?
Well, we should be at 6 of us in there total. There's currently 4.
Is that counting 2 retirees?
Yeah,
Or is it part of 4?
no, there's currently 4 of us in.
Yeah.
And
Just a question. I thought in other departments of the county, we had in the past hired people prior to them taking the civil service exam. Term, temporary,
provision.
So, but
That's how this would work as well, unless there's an active list. They get hired provisionally and have to pass the test at a later date.
If they, yeah, if they've never tested, and there's nobody on an active list that he could pick from, then he can hire someone provisionally. And then, hopefully they pass the test. If they don't pass the test, then we have to figure out what to do.
Right. Which is part of the problem with doing it ahead of time.
People in the back of the room can't hear, I guess. Okay. Sure. So where do we go from here? Anybody know? Anybody got? Yes, Supervisor Conover.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't have an active list, did they test for it, Charles? Did they at least try to put a test out?
Yeah, they just did do a test last, I'm gonna say it was about October. We just got the results back. One of my current staff had to take that test he was in there provisionally, so he just became permanent. And then there was only 3 people took the test when they did give it. So I'm down to a 2-person list. One of them I've already contacted, and I don't believe he is going to submit an application. He's still working. It's an internal move, and I don't know that that's going to happen. And the other one did submit an application. I have to interview.
Yeah, once it falls below 3 people, it's really not even you can go to those 2, but it's not really a active list. Any of your retirees, past or present, interested in coming back part-time?
Oh, I would seriously doubt it.
Okay, all right. And
Good question.
for any opportunity on the short term to bridge to, and it would cost more, of course, but to contract to service?
We certainly could investigate that. Currently we're not having any lag in getting permits out. That's kind of stayed the status quo. Usually everything's looked at in a week, 2 at the most. And certainly field inspections have been, stayed caught up. The one place that we have been lagging, and last year as well, because we were short-staffed then as well, is in the inspections of existing buildings. So try to hit 700 or 800 of those a year when we were fully staffed. I think last year we had just over 3, and we might hit 300 this year.
Just thought that perhaps there's a certain type or certain group of inspections that maybe the a list of services that the Public Works Department has through professional services, various engineering companies, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe should we get in a situation where we have a more complicated or a certain kind of inspection that needs to take place, maybe we could utilize their services on a piggyback basis until we get these. I don't know, Kevin, I don't know if you have.
Well, let me just interject. As an example, the city of Glens Falls is kind of open with Labella,
Right.
because currently the city does not have anybody as code enforcement. They have this person working in that department, but I don't know exactly what his title is or what he does. But that as an example, now I don't know what the cost is. I'm sure it's not something you want to do long term, but that's just as an example. Because there are a number of municipalities throughout the state that do that. They contract with consultants to carry out those duties. I think the municipalities that may have a smaller workload, so to speak, so it's not as expensive, if you will. But anyway, that's a good point.
Want me to answer Ron's? So
Sure.
just to answer Ron's question, Labella happens to be one of our term agreement contracts. The only thing I'm unsure of is that when we request a list of their positions, I'm not sure that code enforcement is one of the things. I mean, they have senior engineers and project managers and so on and so forth, but I'm not sure that that's one. Now, we could certainly amend them to include that, and they'd have to give us a rate for that. And then if we amended it, we could use one of those companies. And I know that CHA is on there, that LaBella is on there, they all have code enforcement in their firms.
Yeah, they have the they're certified.
Yes.
Yep. So we probably, good idea to get those rates, at least from a couple. Do you agree?
If there's a certain type of service that we're worried about falling behind on because of the magnitude of the project or the complexity or whatever, that just a resource that the department can go to if the head of the department is Charles is that feels the need. And at least then you've got it in your quiver and you're there if you need it.
Be prepared, I say. Yes. Oh, sorry. You have something else, Charles?
No, again, just to reiterate, the one area that we are not going to and have not been able to hit the numbers in is inspections of existing buildings. So that generates about $75 an inspection. And that's if it's a paid inspection. So, you know, municipal buildings, so all the town buildings, county buildings, none of those are paid inspections. So they end up being a pretty fair number of buildings. So that's something that if you guys want to entertain, certainly we can do that.
I think I wouldn't want to see the department fall behind or any of these projects fall behind because we can't get
Right.
the work out the door. I mean, that I would think that I'm prepared to, you know, I think we should at least maybe you and Kevin working together, perhaps talking to the city and or to a consultant or two could put something in place. If you end up utilizing it, fine. If not, fine. It's there at your discretion. I think that's important. I mean, you can't be coming back to the committee every time you know, need to do an inspection. I mean, you
I
need,
think if Mr. Wallace and Mr. Hajos get together and come up with a plan or whatever, then we would bring it here and approve it. And as you said, then you don't have to come back here every time. It would be between you two. Supervisor Stroud, you had a question?
Yeah, so I had a question. Charles, what is the salary?
Salary is 56,303, I believe.
30,300?
56,303.
Oh, 56.
And I believe that we're about $5,000 in talking with Washington County, about $5,000 above their starting salary.
Washington County's what, 61?
No, we're above that.
Oh, we're above that.
Yeah.
50.
Okay. It doesn't sound like a bad starting salary.
No.
And it's not a bad job. And as far as the city goes, we have an agreement with the city that if they have complicated, the bigger projects, they'll ask us to come in and help, and we have.
Sure.
So, but in any event, I'll have to compare what the county is to ours, because we haven't had any trouble
Recruiting.
people, but it might be a salary thing. I don't know, you think 56 for starting out, it's not too bad.
Well,
Go ahead.
again, talking with contractors in the field,
Yeah,
right now, that labor rate, I'm gonna say even pre-COVID, but mostly a lot to do with COVID, that labor rate has gone up so much.
Yeah.
You're talking to what a lot of these subs, not even a main contractor, just a sub that shows up with tools and subbing, doing framing or whatever, you're looking at $50, $60, $70 an hour right now. And if it's somebody that's out of the mechanical trades, upwards of 100. Numbers are unbelievable, actually, to build a house right now.
so if we were outsourced, let's say some of the bigger projects, the more complicated projects. If we were to outsource that to a firm like LaBella. Would civil service kind of be
They have a problem with that?
Yeah, well, they have a problem with us outsourcing this. That's not a problem.
No,
So maybe that's the solution. Go.
Contracted.
it's no different than us contracting with a consultant to do any type of work.
Right.
So I contract with consultants to do engineering work, but I have engineers on staff. It's not an issue.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. Yep. Maybe we ought to just consider that as a potential solution is, put out requests for proposals for doing, code enforcement for the county.
You know, I think, just to interject, I think, Mr. Hajos can talk to LaBella and,
Yeah,
who else?
We have 5 firms right now that are multidisciplinary engineering firms
Find
that
out.
we have on board, and know some of them do special inspections.
Mhm.
And they also have code enforcement departments in them, so I can kind of reach out to them. I don't know what's in our salary schedule list and what titles are all in there. I just don't remember seeing, kind of code enforcement, but they could certainly call it something different, or we could amend any one of those contracts to add that in there.
Supervisor Connolly.
Yeah. I think we need to do this. I think we need to do this quickly, but I think we need to do this in concert with the city. I mean, the city's already gone down this road apparently, and so they have information that maybe we need to hear. And also, maybe there's a way of packaging this with the city to everyone's advantage, right? In other words, so I think that discussion needs to take place. Maybe some people need to think outside the box here a little bit.
I agree. Comments? So I think going forward, if Mr. Wallace, Mr. Hajos can get together or maybe and get some numbers, so to speak, and then come back here for our next meeting.
Sure.
We can take a look at it, determine where we go from there. Is that agreeable?
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That sounds good. We'll also push forward on trying to fill the positions with, civil service employees. So we'll look at the salary, see if there are any adjustments we can make there. And we'll get them out there on the street.
Good, thank you, appreciate that. Anything else?
The other thing we're gonna give a quick update. I know everybody gets, your monthly reports, where were our revenues, and I know Rob does his monthly memo. We are behind in revenues. There's no question. We're about 14% behind from last year. And I don't know, it may recover. I'm not hearing of any giant projects. We had a really strong January and February last year with a bunch of townhouses in Lake George. And I don't know if Skimmerhorn's gonna move forward with the old water slide road property. I mean, they planted grass there now, so I don't know where that's at. But I'm not hearing of any giant big money projects, so I think it's going to be marginal if we actually hit budgeted revenue. I figured I'd just give everybody the heads up now.
I don't think there's any surprise there. Haven't heard of any, like, large scale projects on the horizon. So we'll just take it as it comes. Okay. Thank you for the information.
Yep.
So it'll be on the agenda for next month.
Okay, sounds good.
And we'll get some information. And make a decision as to how we move forward.
Good, thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
Good luck. Okay. Privilege of the floor, any member of the public here to talk about this? No. I think that is a no. Okay. We'll move on to the airport agenda. Privilege of the floor, anybody care to comment? Thank you. Airport. We'll go down into action, the agenda, business items, request, new contract, Federal Aviation Administration. Rationale is to perform a flight check prior to activation of the four-box replacement project. So that's complete. Go ahead.
So we got a good, bit of good news from Baseline King. They were able to secure their parts months ahead of schedule. And then they piggybacked on one of our planned runway closures to get the PAPIs installed. So that project is mostly complete, pending a flight check from the FAA. So the flight check would have cost us $14,195. So according to the resolution, it is 90% covered and it's included within capital project H422, replace the four-box PAPI replacement project. So once we get approval, we can have the flight come out roughly later this year, I believe September, we're aiming for.
Later. September to be.
The flight check, yeah.
What do you, comments, questions on that? Okay. Sounds good. So discussion items, Belmont Loop and update. Oh, I'm sorry. Did we have one? No, okay. Motion regarding the new contract, the FAA. Supervisor Diamond, second by Supervisor Conover. Any discussion? Questions, comments? If not, all in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, moving on to discussion. Thank you.
I'm going to open up a bit of bad news, unfortunately. Most of you are familiar over the past couple of months, we were talking about Belmont Weekend. We were working with our FBO, local airports in the area, and firstly, FAA, their special traffic management program to prepare for the Belmont Weekend's increase in traffic. I'm disappointed to report over a 6-day period, we had 8 jet operations, which is 5 aircraft, which is way below what we were expecting. We got multiple reports from pilots stating that they were unable to either access or confirm their reservation with the FAA's Eastern reservation system. So we were unable to meet anywhere near our expected traffic numbers. I've mentioned that we had planned to close runway 1230. So at max capacity, we're expecting between 60 to 80 aircraft. So somewhere between 20 to 30 aircraft was projected, which doubles that to arrival departures, 60 operations. We didn't meet that number, unfortunately. So
I'll just add to what Robin said. So the FAA put in a special system that they had to reserve to
Make
come into
reservations.
any airport. It was here, it was Saratoga, it was
Schenectady and Albany.
and Albany. Yeah, it's connected. So, and the pilot, as Robin said, the pilots had problems securing that reservation. So that's why we didn't see the traffic we expected. We had more for the solar eclipse than we did for Belmont.
Any idea what the problem was or is?
No, go ahead. That was my question.
Right, they still have not confirmed what the problem was on their end. So once that report is done, then I'll share it once it becomes available.
Other than the fact of just government agency.
No comment.
Okay, well, any other questions, comments regarding that?
I would also like to add, this was the first year this program was implemented for our area. So I guess it was a bit of a learning opportunity for everyone involved.
I hope somebody learned something.
What's the related revenue for a loss of revenue?
I'll have to get those numbers from the FBO, but significant given the jet fuels that we were
It would be
expecting.
fuel sales.
Well,
Yeah, it would have been fuel sales. We get a certain amount for the fuel sales from the FBO. So that's what we lost out on.
And then the landing fees, the ramp fees as well.
Okay, next,
So good news now. So the FAA had their annual Part 139 inspection. Pleased to report we actually had a favorable inspection. I shared some copies of the inspection report. There are a few items outstanding to rectify. The airport signage plan, just update the document. We've completed that on the ground. There was some grass and weeds encroaching on the runway on the second page, which we'll take care of very shortly. We've already cleaned up the runway. So once taxiway alpha is finished, we'll clean this up. The challenge for this year is that normally we have a marking painting schedule where we select certain areas and go around and within a 3-year period, remarked on the entire airfield. This year, we remarked runways 119, taxiways Alpha, Echo, Delta, and Charlie. Unfortunately, based on our inspection, we have to remark runway 1230 and taxiway Alpha. The back of their handout there, I got a quote from Highlight. It cost $77,805 to remark those areas, which was our biggest challenge. I believe our resolution is a $50,000 budget. This year, we've used up about 20 to 30,000 of that. So we may have to bring back resolution to increase that if we are allowed to proceed with these remarkings. Questions regarding the inspection or the remarkings?
So we'll see in the future if the runway markings require additional funding.
Yeah, I'll add to that real quick. We'll look at what Robin has in reserve, but I mean, the reserve is typically for projects and things like that. I don't know that he has a significant amount in there. So as he said, we had budgeted for 50,000 for this year. We have already used 20 plus or minus, so we will use the remainder, plus we will eventually, I think, need some additional money, but we'll kind of comb through some of his stuff and see where we can find funding, and then we'll come back to the committee and ask.
Okay, any questions on that? Okay, any comments, privilege of the floor, any public?
I'm gonna add one thing. We didn't have a county facilities building committee meeting this month, because there really wasn't a lot to discuss. One of the things that I just spoke with John about is John and I took our regional forensic facility, I guess I want to say roadshow, out to Fulton County. They wanted to see the presentation that we had provided. They certainly gave a lot of positive feedback, and understood the issues at hand. But again, it comes down to that funding, and I think that was their concern, and I think John can talk to, they discussed it at Intercounty again as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just, we discussed it informally with a couple at Intercounty yesterday, but I think the issue we're gonna face is Fulton County is going to put forward a resolution from their board saying that they will support and they'll use the regional forensic facility if we build it, but they're not gonna come forward with any capital cost. And I think that's gonna be our big challenge. Getting other counties to come forward and help us build this is going to be a pretty heavy lift. We're going to try to do that. We're going to talk at the July intercounty, and our proposal is going to be based on what we know, maybe assessed value or something like that. The counties see if they'd like to come in and help us with the capital cost. But in the end, I think we're going to go back and say, if we want to build it, we're probably on our own to build it. What we need to get definitely is a commitment from other counties that they will use the facility, so we don't end up with a facility that we have to fund isn't self-sustaining.
Right, and with that, we need to determine a budget, if you will, or anticipated revenue from those counties, based on their current average number of autopsies, that sort of thing. But I think where it's going, if in fact we were to build this, I think possibly the best we can do is get a guarantee from these counties that they will utilize this facility. And again, with an estimate of the possible revenue to determine before we forge ahead, if it's feasible for us to build this on our own.
Yeah, I'll just add on, that's one of the things that we really haven't nailed down, is like, how do we proceed with that? Is it based on population? Is it based on the number of deaths in each one of these counties? John and I had talked about it, and with my senior civil engineer at Downey, as I said to John, I think if they're not gonna come up with a capital cost to help us build this, I think that it would require a 30-year commitment for them to use that facility. Easily a 30-year commitment or something to use the facility, if it can't, or indefinitely.
All right, refresh my memory. What did we came up with a budgetary cost to build this? So is it
mean, there's a contingency built in there and it's pretty good contingency of, 20 to 25%, but we were at that 27 million. But even with that contingency, every year, it's just going to increase.
Right. Supervisor Connell.
Yeah, we had this discussion, I think, at a previous meeting. I mean, I think the platform for this has to be of a regional nature, and I think it has to be legislated out of Albany, not unlike Capital District Transit or any of the more regional services, and the participation, cost, it needs to be obligatory. I mean, it can't, nobody can put up 20, almost 30 million. By the time it's all said and done, $30 million on a maybe, that can't happen. So, I mean, I think that this discussion, I think, has to be taken to the New York State Department of Health in terms of statewide, how do you expect these services to continue to be provided on a statewide basis? And if this approach is an approach that you think is the way the state needs to go, then we need to have legislation that allows for this to happen. I mean, I think we've carried this ball about as far as we can.
Need possibly state participation as in dollars.
I think the question is that more to the state of New York, but I think that it's, we've got a state to run here. We've got different regions, have different needs, different volumes, different situations, what's the plan? And, what's the platform? What's the foundation that we're to operate here? And I think that I think we should expect an answer too, I mean, to that question. I mean, I think that's a serious question.
That just me, if I'm the state looking at this, I think a regional approach is the way to go. I think it's more feasible and economical than all these individual things. So hopefully, my point is, based on that, we should get some support with respect to the cost to build a facility, and it's a regional facility. Yes, Supervisor.
As a recollection, what does Warren County do now? Who do we use? What facility do we use?
We currently use Dr. Sikorica to perform all our autopsies, and typically he'll use, say, Saratoga and he goes to other hospitals, Glens Falls Hospital, but they don't want to be in the business of doing autopsies. They're in the business of saving people, not investigating cases, and that's the biggest part of this, is they've kind of shied away because they don't want to appear in court. They don't want to go. So,
And that goes.
and
to hospital.
yeah, and we've lost space at Glens Falls and we got it back. I mean, it's set up and down. Is he going to be able to perform an autopsy there? Is he not? In all counties, and to kind of go back to kind of around what you said as far as the state you can certainly reach out to them, but the state is going to say, we put this on you because you're the county, you have corners, you take care of it. And that's just my upfront take on it. But that's why each county is required to have corners so that we can perform these services.
Well, I think that in that case, we just need to push harder.
Yeah, I agree.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to mention that right now, the preliminary costs are like $28 million, correct?
Correct.
And we just went through a situation with the Joseph Warren Museum where it started off at $140,000, I believe, and by the time we got to the construction aspect, it was significantly more. I think we need to advance this rather quickly because I'd hate to see our experience going through a estimated cost much greater than $28 million from this point on.
Again, and I think that comes to John and Intercounty. And we need to start, I mean, I certainly know we need to get the state involved, but we have to get the buy-ins from these counties to participate. I mean, most counties that we've had through the study have all seen presentation and they all have the report. it's, the next step is, are they willing to do it or not?
Supervisor Thomas?
How can you draw a comparison between a coroner and a forensic pathologist? I don't, where do you get that?
What do you mean a comparison? I don't think I compared them.
Well, you're saying that's what the state would say. You've got coroners, so you don't, that's your problem. I don't.
The state's saying you have to perform autopsies, and the state's saying that you have to have the coroners in each county. Each county has coroners. You have to use the forensic pathologist, and the reason they use, and that Dr. Sikorica is a certified pathologist. When you go into a court case, you're not using the coroners in a court
Coroners
case.
don't
But the
perform.
coroners are just going to, identify, determine, and say yes, and then it goes to the next step, which is the autopsy with the forensic pathologist, which again, we don't necessarily have to have a certified forensic pathologist. But if it goes to a court case or something like that, then they're needed.
But aren't we talking about hiring a certified forensic pathologist for this facility?
Yes,
We are.
Yes.
We're talking
Well,
about
then
having,
why do we need one? You just said we don't need one.
no, I said you don't need a certified one. But if you want to have a facility that is. I guess the best way to put it is if you don't have a certified forensic pathologist and it goes into a court case, that person can be taken apart in court because they're not a certified forensic pathologist. And there's a kind of a nationwide shortage of forensic pathologists, but there's also a nationwide certification for these, and those are the ones that are more recognized or recommended as such. Do you need to have one? No, we in fact talked for several years. If it's not Dr. Sikorica, if we do put this facility in place, we would certainly start off maybe not having a certified, but work towards the accreditation to getting them certified.
But I think for a regional facility, if the state of New York doesn't come up with at least 50% of the money, then I don't think we should even consider it. Because I think the responsibility goes to the state of New York. It's basically law enforcement. It's enforcing the law. If you're talking court cases and stuff, that ought to be their responsibility, seem like, but I don't know, you'd have to wonder about that sometimes.
Supervisor Grassi, do you have a question?
Yeah, it's just, every one of these counties are using a current service somewhere. So why would they want to come with us unless it was cost effective? I mean, we're all in the same basic situation, but they all have a facility that they're currently using. And without a commitment, a firm commitment from them, it's really a slippery slope, I think. I mean, should we look at being concerned, number one, about Warren County? Have we approached Glens Falls Hospital? And if we built a space there that was just for that, we certainly wouldn't need the scale of a regional facility. But there may be other options with this. We've been talking about it so long, and without that firm commitment, everybody's interested, but put money on the table. It's not happening. And there's gotta be some go, no-go date that we say, okay, this it's just not gonna work out. I mean, budget time is coming, not just for us, but for all the other municipalities. There's gotta be a line in the sand somewhere where we say, all right, it's a good idea, we need to move on.
I'll just, to answer your first question is they're all in the same boat. They, Clinton County, Essex County, St. Lawrence County, they all use Champlain Valley Hospital and who's not ready to renew their contracts to be able to use their facility. The Saratoga is experiencing the same thing. And the other thing we discuss is that there was a mass casualty similar to what happened with Ethan Allen. There is not a facility in this area to store any of those bodies. In fact, when Ethan Allen took place, they stored them in a refrigerated truck.
Which happens in major events.
Yes, it does.
There is a service. I mean, there's. You can call 1-800-autopsy and out of Albany, they'll take care of the autopsy, but it's extremely expensive. So, and that's what
That's
some of
the-
the counties are saying.
I'll give you an example. Let's say Fulton County. Fulton County was taking their, because they didn't have a facility, I think they used Nathan Latour Hospital. They couldn't use it anymore. They were taking all of their autopsies to to Dutchess County for the forensic pathologist there to do all the autopsy. And it was costing them a significant amount of money to do that.
We'll go to.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question for the county administrator. During your discussions with these counties, what's the alternative to presenting without those counties actually spending money on bricks and mortar for this facility? What other options are they discussing, if any?
We've broken it down in our presentation to the capital costs and the operating cost. And we've said these are the capital costs. And again, so we presented at the last inter-county session that we had here. And we showed them the cost based on the study and what we think we would build. Here, we think Warren County is the logical place, though Fulton County thinks Saratoga County is a better choice because of the proximity to some of the more southern counties, but we think we're centrally located. So, you know, we presented all that information to them. We said we'd come back. We've sent them copies of all the design and our presentation and told them we would come back at a future inter-county, and we're going to do it. There's one in Hamilton County in July. And we're going to go in with a proposal that says, if we're going to build it together as a regional facility and share the building cost, this is what it would take to do that. And we haven't presented any other option for that. So we haven't talked about maybe having a contractor come in and build a facility and operate it for us. And we basically just focused on doing it ourselves. And
I just think at this point in time, with the numbers being floated out there without other counties putting committed monies towards the construction aspect, I couldn't support this project, just dependent on Warren County residents only. It's just not cost effective.
There are a number of things that we need to pursue, if you will, the state, the other counties, that sort of thing. But is that it?
Yeah, I just wanted the other committee members know where it stood as we continue with this process, ongoing process.
Supervisor Stroud and Connell.
Well, I agree with Jack. We shouldn't do it alone. I think we need to do it together. But I also don't believe any of the counties that we talked to said that they wouldn't invest in something like that. I don't think they've said no, not at this point. But the one idea that came up in the beginning of this discussion was sitting down with the Department of Health. And it might not be a bad idea to do that in an inter-county way. Ask several other counties to sit down with us, to sit down with the Department of Health and talk about this topic and make them part of the player rather than somebody that likes to sit outside.
Good point.
Right, can I just make a suggestion to that? John, I agree with you 100%, but I also think it shouldn't just be county administrator or county chair. It should be the coroners. They're the ones that are the boots on the ground and know what's taking place and what's happening, or some of the forensic pathologists that are being used in these areas. Those are the
Include
ones-
them into that
yeah, they
big
should
discussion.
be part of that.
Yeah.
Supervisor Conover.
Yeah, I mean, we have a problem, a growing problem, and we're trying to get out in front of the problem before it overwhelms us, before it becomes critical. And that in and of itself is a difficult process because some people don't move until something becomes critical, right? Until it's put in the face. To try to do that on a regional basis is even more difficult and more overwhelming. Because of the learning curve. You're talking to people that may or may not be fully aware, fully sensitized to the issue. And so, the whole idea here is to try to get out in front of this and do something good. That's a lot of water to haul. That's a lot of water to haul. And I think that we have a responsibility to haul that water the best way that we can. And the best way is to keep assembling a big boat and put everybody in the boat and and to try to move forward in that fashion is gonna take a while. It's,
So our next step going forward, what does the committee suggest we do?
Have that meeting,
Have the meeting,
intercounty coroners, Department of Health.
I think the next step for, as I understand, will talk to the Department of Health and propose this and see what their feeling is on it before we go forward for the other counties. I think we should talk to them first.
so
We
gauge
did
their,
look for congressionally directed spending this year. We couldn't find a way to make this fit into anything they were offering.
In addition, if this meeting, which should happen, but you're right, do a preliminary call Department of Health and feel them out. But we also should put out elected representatives in with invitations to this meeting. Because, grant money, capital funding has to happen. We can't do this on our own. And the other counties probably are reluctant until that they see that there is a buy-in on the state. And then perhaps once they see this is real and it's a need for them too, that they'll chip in. But right now, it's a little preliminary.
yes, we also should involve our higher elected representatives. What's this, Kerry Warner, was Warner. Madison, Dan Stack. Yeah, I mean, at least get them aware of what we're trying to do. Get the, they need to be engaged, involved, whatever, but I think at the moment, contact DOH. Maybe you need to meet with them, because it's a lot easier for people to put you off over the phone or an email than it is eyeball to eyeball.
Up with money. We're not the only county. There are 62 counties in New York State that's having this problem.
Sure, right.
I'm willing to bet that it is a state problem. And the Department of Health has to get involved and has to help in providing solutions.
you look at the demographics and you look at the challenge, it's only gonna worsen.
Yeah.
And so, best case scenario now, you're talking a minimum of 3 years down the road. From where we sit, and that's assuming you had a ghost situation. So, I mean, someone needs to speak to, with authority, needs to speak to our counterparts in these other counties about what the reality is here. Not just today, but what that reality is gonna look like 3-4 years down the road. And because until everyone is confronted with that, I don't think we're gonna get where we need to go. And people need to understand that reality.
You need to get grasp, as they say, the gravity of the situation
That's right.
becomes bigger with time. Urgent, whatever. So we'll initiate some contact with Department of Health. And I don't know, should we contact assembly people, Senator, Dan Steck, et cetera, we probably should do that as well.
I think that vote needs to include our law enforcement people as well, our district attorney and the people that rely on that forensic evidence and yeah, I mean, we need to, this affects a lot of our operating institutions and everyone needs to understand the problem.
Right.
And I'm not sure at this stage that everyone really has a full grasp of the issue and got to get them to that point first.
So initially, back Department of Health and the other elected officials. Where we are, where we're going. Continue our discussion here next month. Agreed?
Is Because after all, is doing nothing an option? Right? That's the point, right? Is doing nothing an option? And there may be those that feel doing nothing is an option. We're just gonna continue to stumble along the way we've been stumbling along. And
Well,
if that's the case, then fine, but if that's not the case, they need to understand doing nothing here is,
with respect to our responsibilities to the citizens, to the constituents, call them what you want, Warren County, your local municipalities or whatever. It's our responsibility not to do nothing. That would be a disservice to them. So we'll move ahead best we can. Agreed? All right, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. Anything else? Yes, Supervisor Thomas.
Yeah, not to beat a dead horse or anything, but just for a little clarity on the Joseph Warren project. I believe we spent, at least from my perspective, I believe we spent about $142,000 on design and putting together a project. 80,000 of that was ARPA money. The rest of it was taxpayer money. You know, Warren County taxpayer money. The preliminary cost on that project was between $600,000 and $700,000. Because I'm hearing all kinds of numbers being thrown around. And when it went out to bid and come back in, it was just under $1 million. So just to get the numbers out there and get them straight. That's my mission here today. And also, now that we're not gonna do this project, I'd like to know what the county's plans are for this building over there. I mean, it's sat there for years. Are we just gonna continue to let it sit there, and vegetate, or do we have plans for it, or
I don't know that there are any
just a thought?
plans at this point, but going forward, a good point. We ought to do something with it, I think.
Well, if you're asking me, I'd like to sit down with the original bid documents. See what was in there that triggered these extraordinarily high bids. Was it a time element? Was it certain features that they perhaps could have thought was required, but perhaps were not required? I'd like to go through the bid documents and change the language. Maybe allow more time. Maybe it was a time factor that contributed to this. I don't know, but I'd like to go through the bid documents and rebid it, and I'd like to continue pursuing the Joseph Warren.
We still have committees in place, right? We had one was
Yeah.
architecture or what have you, and
I'm not willing to give up.
they could get together with the committee and review this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mean, I think going back to what Frank said, we never thought this was going to be much less than $700,000. So that being said, do I hear you saying if it's $700,000, we're good to go? We'll spend that. You just don't want to spend 900,000, because that's where we'll get. We put a lot of work into this. Kevin's guys have put a lot of work and maybe get it to 700,000. Then we'd have to come back to the committee and the board to say, are you willing to spend 700,000 on this?
You have a building, like Frank said, is sitting there, deteriorating, not being used for anything. What are you gonna do with it? All right, so getting it out, redoing the electrical, HVAC. I mean, if you wanted to reuse that building, you'd have to do these things anyways. You couldn't go in and use that building and have it be acceptable to the Department of Health and everything else as a municipal building the way it is. So there's an X amount of dollars that the county, if it wants to reuse the building, if not for a Joseph Warren Museum and for other purposes, they're going to have to invest several $100,000 into that building to bring it up to standards of make that building usable. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that has to go in the picture too. So if you don't go with the Joseph Warren Museum, and we could be making use of that building for whatever administrative services and or whatever, we have to rehab it anyways. I don't know. Yeah, so I'm willing to at least sit down and take a look and see what triggered the higher numbers. And have that discussion anyways.
Okay, well. You want to get the committee back together, so to speak, and look at it?
Yes, I'd like to.
Sure.
Mr. Thomas?
Sure.
You're the chairman of at least one of those committees, right?
Yep, co-chair. Yep.
Co-chair.
Well, no.
All right,
Sure.
so we'll leave it in your hands to, and in conjunction with Supervisor Stroud.
Good.
Let's put it together. We can at least take a look at it. In the end, like, as Mr. Hajos alluded to, if it's just not something the county is willing to undertake because of the dollars and cents, maybe we should sell it. But anyway, well,
Yeah, just to add on to that, I remember a couple years ago when Ryan Moore was here, I think all of you were aware of it at the time, is Ryan had asked myself and Lexi to kind of come up with the properties that the county owns that are the properties that we can sell. I mean, there's 2 lots right across the street from us that are county owned property that sit there vacant, and I mean, yeah, they, a lot of trees on them or whatever, but that certainly could be sold as well. But there's quite a bit of property that the county has that was, again, at one time looked at to whether or not we should be selling any of that property on.
Supervisor
part of the discussion that I heard, was some people thought that, that wasn't the location. If we were gonna make an investment like that, that wasn't where it needed to be made. And I think that some discussion needs to take place as to address that. In other words, that if there's a option analysis that's been done, then I think, because it's gonna come up again, and I just, not by me, but by some.
I was just gonna add, I'll certainly, Frank, if you want me to set up another one of those meetings, I certainly
Sure.
can. I don't necessarily think we need to bring Labella in for that meeting, because that's just a cost that we'd have to pay them. We can just kind of go through it, and I can sit and go through what we had in the bid, why it was in the bid. Kind of go.
Yeah, I think you get the committee and look at it and discuss in the committee, what do you want to do without? Want to cut some costs, because you're talking about, at a minimum, cutting a couple $100,000. And I've been a consultant for many years, and Mr. Hajos there. You take $1 million project, and if you're looking for a big chunk, it's usually pretty hard to find unless you're willing to sacrifice some big chunks of that project. In other words, you're not gonna do it by changing some windows or electrical devices or this or that. So you need to sit down and say, hey, if you really want to do something here, what can you live without? If you do the bare minimum and make it a museum. I don't, that's topic for discussion in the committee. So we'll do that and bring it back here. Any other?
Yeah, I think we owe it to the taxpayers. I mean, due
Yeah.
diligence. We spent $142,000, we ought to just,
Gotta get something.
just stop and not even talk about it. I think
Yeah.
it's, not,
I agree.
would not be right.
I agree wholeheartedly. But we'll do that. No, so any other comments, questions? Audience, Supervisor Connell. All right, no public comment. Entertain a motion to adjourn. Supervisor Connell or Supervisor Stroud, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.